Into this speech that came up from MIT that he gave in, I'm not sure what year this was, but he is talking about education. Now, the sort of the symmetry here is that for at least a decade in this country, our education philosophy went down the toilet because of almost $1 billion that the Gates Foundation poured into an experiment in value-added teaching and using metrics to determine in high-stakes testing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And this speech in 2011 is in the heart of that from Michael Bloomberg. And we should note that New York City schools were highly segregated before he came in and became even worse under Bloomberg. And de Blasio has not had a lot of luck, but he has done some things that they're piloting programs. I know for a fact in District 15 in Brooklyn, in the middle schools, they have actually achieved they're starting to integrate the schools more. They're experimenting with different ways of doing this because it's not that quite easy. Nobody wants to leave their local school. But Bloomberg had not only bought into this corporate reform of education, which incidentally, the Rand Institute, hired by the Gates Foundation to assess their own program after they had basically taken American education and thrown it off the rails, came back and said, we were wrong. We should probably just listen to educators. I mean, literally, that's what it said. And Bloomberg, of course, bought into it big time. He put a privatizer of schools, became the school board chair under Bloomberg. Here is Bloomberg at MIT talking about, this is the thing with oligarchs. They talk about stuff like they know exactly what needs to be done with total disregard for what experts say.
Look for the phrase ex cathedra in this clip.
Okay.
Oh, intelligentsia.
Well, in education, it is quality of teacher, quality of teacher, quality of teacher. And I would, if I had the ability, which nobody does really, to just design the system and say, ex cathedra, this is what we're going to do. You would cut the number of teachers in half, but you would double the compensation of them, and you would weed out all the bad ones and just have good teachers. And double the class size with a better teacher is a good deal for the students.
What? Galaxy brain, Jesus right? Christ. Like, cut the number of teachers in half and then just have the good ones. Oh, by what metric? Like, by like the statistical...
Well, no, but that's exactly the point.
I can't. Yeah, I don't know.
But that's exactly the point. It's literally saying what I would do if I had full authority is I would use magic and create a system that just works better.
I know. I've just got to say, it's part and parcel of his overall paternalism. I mean, I've never seen such someone who just thinks that they can control everybody. From the soda ban, which Trump would win on. Which Trump would win on alone in the Midwest. Just say soda ban. It's over. It's over. Trump wins, right?
Trying to take away soda.
Right.
But that's a real thing, Emma.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Emma. That's a real thing. So the paternalism and the way that he wants to leverage the force of the government to implement that paternalism, right? He doesn't want to be paternalistic and say, let's figure out why there's poverty. Let's figure out why impoverished people are drinking bad sodas. Maybe it has something to do with the fact that they can't really afford a lot of good food and they're living in food deserts. He doesn't want to do that. What he wants to do is have a punitive action, tax them so that we can control their behavior. I'm sorry, I just had to get that in there.
No, you're right.
Really a deep problem.
But it's just, you're exactly right, Ben, and it's part of what we've been talking about, stopping and frisking black and brown people just because he feels like he has the authority to override the Constitution and won't stop doing it until the federal courts have to actually get involved. Just fantasizing about cutting teachers in half and just not physically cutting the amount of
probably
cutting the amount of teachers in half and just putting the good ones there. It's like he has ego is too light of a word.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
he believes he can be the overlord of people.
And,
He was the
and-
Mad
and let
King
me-
of New York for
the-
longer than you're supposed to be allowed to be the mayor.
He helped change the Constitution
Changed
so
the
he
laws to be
could
there.
he could have another term.
He is the law.
What that also I think exposes is that he's never really had a conversation with any number
human
of
being.
educators that he's listened to, because the idea that you can have a good, right, and how you define that and how you measure that and how you assess that is would be in many respects impossible. But a good teacher, what a good teacher does basically over a baseline is has the ability to meet various students where they are and address what their particular needs are in learning this stuff. And if you double the number of kids in a classroom, you're going to diminish the ability of even what you consider a good teacher.
Good teacher,
And
absolutely.
you're creating an environment that is doomed to fail. And so the idea that like what we need to do is offer more money to get the good teachers in, because only the good teachers, according to Bloomberg and the way that he perceives things, they would be teaching, but they want more money. And so they go into finance or wherever it is they go, which of course also knows
fantasy.
nothing about teachers.
And also, it's just like, it sounds like a 2 a.m. snorting lines and cutting them up conversation
Exactly.
fantasy about, like, not someone who's seriously legislating or actually thinking about the real issues. It's like a coked out frat boy thinking about how he's going to make schools better.
It's like one of
That's
Trump's
perfect.
3 a.m. Adderall tweets.
Right.
Yes, and the idea that there's like this host of like really good teachers who are just waiting in line for we just got to get the pay up by another 15, 25% or maybe 30% or 50% and then I'll become a teacher is
The
just
markets will take care of it.
Right.
It's just absurd.
Spending some time as a teacher, I would love that 50%. I would have loved that 50%
Yes.
increase. But the red tape alone was not commensurate with that. So that's not the problem. The pay is not the problem. A lot of people who teach out of the passion for it.
Exactly.
And this speaks exactly to what all of you have said. As soon as you pack those rooms with 10 more students, let alone like doubling it, just 10 more students will break any teacher. I don't care how good they are.
Yeah, I mean, it just shows that this is a guy who has not had a single conversation that he has listened to with someone who's actually teaches. I mean, that's the thing, is that I only know this because I've had conversations with teachers and educators. He clearly has not had that conversation with anybody where he believes that like teachers go into it and money is a primary factor. If money was a primary factor, there would not be any good teachers.
And anyone who just has a cursory knowledge of education knows that class size is a huge indicator of how students actually absorb information. I don't know that much about education policy. It's fairly convoluted, but that's pretty basic, right, Ben?
Right. And then on the other side of it, that's absolutely it, class size. But again, look at how he wants to implement his paternalism, because the real problem as a teacher, I taught in extremely wealthy neighborhoods, and then I taught in like I needed to carry a gun neighborhood, like extremely impoverished neighborhoods. He doesn't want to address the fact that poverty has to be one of the leading indicators of how you perform in school.
Yep.
Like there are kids who are able to get all of the resources that they need to do anything they possibly could. But then the next year when I was in the poor school, we had books that you couldn't pick up without them falling apart. Right. And even more than that, you had kids who were sleeping on couches, kids who
Exactly.
didn't have clean clothes. Like we had to wash some kids' clothes sometimes. So he doesn't implement his paternalism in a way that's like to promote the general welfare, like out of love and concern. He uses it to be punitive. You're going to make these teachers take double the class now? Right? Ask any teacher. That's like the worst punishment that you could give them. You could probably make them work through the summer and they'll do that before they would want you to double their class size.
And another thing, just to add on to that, it's part of this whole privatization charter school philosophy that basically says that if you're the smartest kid and you actually are worth it, you'll be able to go to these select charter schools and
Right.
the kids who deserve it out of the poor neighborhoods will be successful, and promoting that kind of philosophy, it's like, it's out of a movie. It's like they watched Tequila and the Bee and they've decided that that's how everything should go.
I just want to say,
Sure.
since we're on education, I have to say this. One of my, the two reasons I left teaching was one, because YouTube was starting to get popular, and I knew eventually they'll get me on video cussing students out. So that was the first reason I left. But the second reason was it was just too depressing after you spent hours helping a kid see how smart they are and helping them understand a problem, and then they go home. And they go home and they don't have food. They go home and they're in a neighborhood that's not conducive to learning. They go home and they can't even wash their clothes. And then they come back, expect them to remember and retain anything, when every day it's a reset with poverty.
Yep.
So it's a real thing. Like everything that Mayor Bloomberg does, it never addresses the underlying problem, which is poverty. It always uses how can we use the government to crush this problem? Throw the boys up against the wall, double the classroom size, tax poor people so they don't drink sugary sodas. He is an authoritarian in his own way. And the fact that he's going to ascend through the Democratic Party because he has enough money to beat Donald Trump, what the hell dystopic timeline did we get knocked into?
And he's a Republican. Let's just put that out there.
He's
And a
literally a Republican.
Vote blue no matter who, even if that blue is red.
Except for Bernie. Don't vote for Bernie because he's not really blue.
Right.
I think he's probably technically like a Straussian, right? Isn't it like the Straussians who had that sort of, but we should say, let's put this up. Study Hall at Study Hall XYZ is proud to announce a new initiative. It is the Negative Bloomberg Meme Micro Grant. Make and post an original meme about Michael Bloomberg's history of racism, Islamophobia, sexism. I would add on that pro-corporate education reform. I mean, this is the thing, is that like, don't sleep on his being a pro-corporate high-stakes tester because we don't hear about that as much anymore because a lot of that is ebbed around the country. The impetus, but he's that guy. If you like Arnie Duncan and you like the high stakes testing, you're gonna love Michael Bloomberg. Here it is. You can make this thing. You tag Study Hall, and they Venmo you $5, and everyone enjoys the meme. This is
that's so good. I'm a part of Study Hall. I'm gonna let my dues lapse. I'm gonna check on that